He asked me not to talk about the cancer. I didn't. He showed up to the hospital with a lawyer instead of flowers. I'd been feeling sick for months before the doctors finally found the tumor. So when I got the diagnosis, I thought my husband Marcus would be scared like I was. But he never seemed interested in hearing about my appointments or treatment options. And when I mentioned starting chemotherapy over breakfast, he slammed his coffee mug down so hard it shattered. "Stop talking about depressing medical while I'm eating," he yelled. "I'm so sick of hearing about your cancer. You've become a burden and all you talk about is being sick. Just stop talking about it completely." I stared at him in shock. 12 years of marriage, and this was his response to me possibly dying. I carefully sat down my toast and said quietly, "Okay, I won't mention the cancer again." Marcus looked relieved and went back to his phone like nothing had happened. When I started going to chemotherapy appointments alone, Marcus initially enjoyed having the house to himself. But after the first week, he started texting constantly asking where I was. When I just replied appointment without elaborating, his messages became frantic. "What appointment? Talk to me. What's going on?" But I didn't because he specifically asked me not to. Our neighbors noticed me getting thinner and losing my hair and started asking Marcus if everything was okay. He had to keep making vague excuses about stress and diet changes. Soon, everyone on our street was whispering about Marcus doing nothing while his wife was clearly sick. By week 3, Marcus was showing up at my oncologist's office. "Just tell me what's happening," he'd plead in the parking lot. "I need to know about your health." The receptionist would tell him I was with the doctor and couldn't discuss my condition. My sister threw me a small gathering at her house to shave my head before the chemo made it fall out in clumps. Marcus's own mother was there and asked why Marcus wasn't. When my sister explained what he'd said about my diagnosis disgusting him, his mother went pale and immediately left to confront her son. Marcus's boss's wife was at the gathering too, since she'd gone through breast cancer the year before. She asked where Marcus was, and when she heard the story, she told her husband that same night. Marcus's boss called him into the office the next day, asking what kind of man abandons his wife during cancer treatment. Marcus had to sit through a meeting about the company's values while everyone stared at him. The gathering gifts included a care package from Marcus's own mother, who'd found out about the event from my sister instead of her son. Marcus had been calling me daily by then, leaving desperate voicemails. "Please, just give me updates about treatment. I'm sorry, okay? I didn't mean it like that. Tell me about the appointments, the prognosis, anything." His mother confronted Marcus at Sunday dinner, crying about how she'd raised him better than this. His siblings told him they were ashamed to call him their brother. His father actually removed him as executive of his will that same day. When I collapsed during my 3rd chemo session and was hospitalized for severe dehydration, the hospital called Marcus as my emergency contact. He burst into my room shaking and pale. "Why didn't you tell me it was this serious? You could have died." I simply looked at him and said nothing about my condition. He grabbed my hand with tears in his eyes. "Please, I'm begging you. Talk to me about what's happening." I turned away without responding. The nurses had heard what he said and were glaring at him from the doorway. HR at his company called him in asking if he needed time off for his wife's medical crisis that apparently everyone except him knew about. The hospitalization meant I needed help at home, which Marcus discovered when he came back to find a home health aide in our bedroom. He stood frozen in the doorway, staring at the IV pole and medical equipment. "What is all this? How bad is it? Is the cancer spreading?" When I just nodded toward the aide to explain, he punched the wall and screamed, "Tell me about the cancer." I take it back. Okay. The home health aide reported the wall punch to her supervisor. The delivery company that brought the hospital bed told all our neighbors about the poor cancer patient whose husband was never around to help. People started leaving notes on his car about what a terrible person he was. My sister posted updates on Facebook that went viral in our community because she wrote about being my only support system since my husband finds cancer disgusting. Marcus created multiple fake accounts trying to comment, "That's not the whole story. She won't talk to me. I apologized." His best friend from college publicly commented that he regretted ever knowing such a pathetic excuse for a husband. My brother became my medical power of attorney and attended every oncology appointment with me while taking detailed notes. Marcus followed us to one appointment and stood in the parking lot with flowers, but I walked past him in complete silence. When my oncologist told me the tumor had shrunk enough for surgery, I scheduled it without telling Marcus. He only found out when our doorbell camera sent him a notification of my sister arriving with balloons that said, "Surgery success." He called me frantically and I answered on speaker, while still groggy from anesthesia. "Why didn't you tell me you were having surgery today?" he screamed. I calmly replied, "You said stop talking about the cancer, so I did." The nurses in recovery all gasped, and one whispered, "What kind of monster says that to his sick wife?" Marcus rushed to the hospital, but had to walk past medical staff who'd heard everything, all of them glaring with pure disgust. When he burst into my recovery room, he wasn't apologetic anymore. He was calculating and cold. He pulled out his phone and showed me a recording from that morning when I was half conscious from pre-op medication. "Good thing I have you on tape," he said with a smile I'd never seen before, saying, "You deliberately kept me from major medical decisions. My lawyer says that's grounds for legal separation with me keeping the house since you've made it impossible for me to fulfill my marital duties." I stared at him in horror as he smiled for the first time in months. "Now," he said coldly, "let's discuss how you're going to explain to a judge why you isolated me from your medical care." I looked down at the surgical drain hanging from my side, the bandages covering my chest, and realized he'd been planning this. My whole body went cold, staring at his satisfied face while my sister grabbed my hand. The nurse who'd been checking my vitals files froze, and another reached for the call button immediately. Marcus's lawyer walked in carrying a briefcase and placed papers on my hospital tray. He said these were separation papers and that I had 7 days to respond before the hearing, where they'd prove I'd deliberately pushed Marcus away. My hands shook as I looked at papers claiming I'd been mentally unstable and refused reasonable support from my loving husband. Marcus stood there recording everything on his phone while his lawyer explained how my refusal to communicate proved I wasn't capable of making sound decisions. My sister grabbed her phone and started frantically texting someone. My brother appeared in the doorway and physically blocked Marcus from getting closer to my bed. The nurse who'd hit the call button told Marcus he needed to leave immediately because I was post-surgical and needed rest. Marcus's lawyer said they had every right to be there, but 2 security guards arrived and escorted them both out. Marcus pointed at me as they removed him and said, "This isn't over. See you in court." My sister's call connected and she put it on speaker. It was her friend from law school who specialized in family law. The lawyer's name was Patricia Chen, and she said she'd be at the hospital in 20 minutes. That evening, Patricia spread Marcus's recording and the separation papers across my hospital tray. She listened to the recording 3 times, then looked up at me with a grim expression. "He's been planning this," she said, "but he made mistakes." She explained that recordings made when someone is under the influence of medication aren't admissible in court. Patricia pulled out her laptop and started building our defense. She wanted copies of every text Marcus sent begging me to talk after he told me not to, screenshots of my sister's Facebook posts about being my only support, statements from every medical professional who witnessed his absence. My sister already had a folder ready with months of documentation. Patricia spent 4 hours at the hospital documenting everything, including statements from nurses about Marcus's threatening behavior. She made notes about his mother attending my head-shaving gathering and his complete absence from treatment. She photographed the wall he'd punched at our house and got statements from our neighbors about his behavior. 2 days after my surgery, Patricia called to warn me that Marcus had filed an emergency motion claiming I was mentally incompetent due to cancer affecting my brain. He was asking for control of our joint assets in the house. She said he was going for the throat and we needed to be ready for anything. My brother came home from work furious because Marcus's coworker had asked if it was true I'd refused all treatment and was choosing to die out of spite. Marcus had been telling everyone at his office that I was suicidal and wouldn't let him help. The lies were spreading through his whole company, and people who didn't know the truth were feeling sorry for him. Patricia filed our response Monday morning, including sworn statements from 5 nurses who'd witnessed Marcus's calculated behavior in my hospital room. She subpoenaed our doorbell camera footage showing Marcus leaving every morning at 6 a.m. and returning after midnight throughout my entire treatment. The footage showed him walking past my car in the driveway, knowing I was too sick to drive myself to appointments. We included bank statements showing Marcus had withdrawn $15,000 from our joint account the day after my diagnosis. Patricia traced the money to a vacation rental in Miami, where Marcus had spent a weekend while I was getting my first chemotherapy infusion. He'd gone to the beach while poison dripped into my veins. Marcus's mother called me sobbing. She said she had no idea Marcus had actually said those words about my cancer, disgusting him. She'd believed him when he claimed I was pushing him away and being irrational from medication. Now she knew the truth and offered to testify against her own son. Patricia was shocked because having his mother on our side would devastate his case. The oncologist who treated me for 6 months wrote a detailed letter for court. She stated that throughout my entire treatment, Marcus had never attended a single appointment, never called for updates, and never once contacted the office with questions. She wrote that my sister and brother had been my consistent support system, and that Marcus's absence was notable to everyone on the medical team. That night, I was resting when my phone exploded with notifications. Marcus had posted in several men's rights forums about his wife using cancer to manipulate him and turn his family against him. He wrote that I'd exaggerated my illness to gain sympathy and was now trying to steal everything in the divorce. Within an hour, I had dozens of hateful messages from strangers. Men I'd never met sent threats about what happens to women who lie about cancer for attention. Someone found my LinkedIn and posted my information saying I was faking illness to rob my husband. Another person posted photos of our house from Google Maps with our address visible. Patricia filed for an emergency restraining order that same night. The judge who reviewed the evidence was a breast cancer survivor herself. She read through the social media posts, the threats, the medical records showing Marcus's complete absence. She granted the restraining order immediately and ordered Marcus to remove all posts within 24 hours or face contempt charges. She also scheduled an emergency hearing for the following week. My sister spent days creating a timeline of Marcus's behavior. She'd gone back through his social media from when I first got diagnosed. His early posts never mentioned my illness at all. When friends commented asking how I was doing, he either ignored them or gave vague responses about me being dramatic. During my treatment, he posted photos from bars, golf courses, and a beach vacation. She found posts where Marcus's friends offered support, and he replied saying, "It's not that serious and she's milking it." The contrast was devastating when laid out chronologically. She printed everything in color and organized it in a binder with tabs for each month of my treatment. Patricia said it was the most damning evidence she'd seen. Marcus's lawyer filed a motion demanding all my medical records, claiming they needed to verify my diagnosis was real. The motion suggested I might be faking cancer or exaggerating symptoms. Patricia fought it viciously, calling it harassment of a cancer patient. The judge was furious and denied the motion, adding sanctions against Marcus for filing it. At the emergency hearing, Marcus showed up in an expensive suit, looking confident. His lawyer argued that I deliberately isolated Marcus and made it impossible for him to be supportive. Then, Patricia played the doorbell camera footage. 6 months of Marcus leaving early and coming home late. Footage of him stepping over medical supply deliveries without bringing them inside. Video of him driving past me, struggling to get from the car to the house after chemotherapy. The judge's face got harder with each clip. When Patricia played the audio recording from the hospital where Marcus threatened me post-surgery, the judge actually leaned back in her chair and closed her eyes. Marcus's lawyer tried to object, but there was nothing to object to since Marcus had recorded it himself and provided it as evidence. Patricia presented Marcus's browser history that his lawyer had been forced to turn over. He'd been searching how to prove incompetence and getting power of attorney from sick spouse and cancer divorce settlements 2 weeks after my diagnosis. He'd been planning to use my illness against me from the very beginning. The timestamp showed he started researching divorce strategies the same day he told me my cancer disgusted him. The judge ordered immediate psychological evaluations for both of us. Mine came back showing appropriate stress responses to cancer diagnosis and treatment, but no mental illness or incompetence. Marcus's evaluation revealed narcissistic personality disorder and antisocial traits. The psychologist wrote that Marcus viewed my illness as an inconvenience to his lifestyle and showed no genuine empathy or remorse. Marcus's employer finished their investigation after employees came forward about his behavior. He'd been telling different people different stories about me refusing treatment, being suicidal, having brain damage from cancer, and refusing his help. They fired him for creating a hostile work environment and using company resources to spread lies. The termination letter cited damage to company reputation. Without a job, Marcus couldn't pay his lawyer. The lawyer filed a motion to withdraw from the case, but the judge denied it, saying Marcus had created this situation himself. The lawyer had to continue working without payment, and you could see him getting more frustrated at each hearing as Marcus kept making things worse. Marcus's father called Patricia's office and asked to testify. He said he wanted everyone to know what kind of son he'd raised and that he was ashamed. At the next hearing, he took the stand and described Sunday dinner, where he'd asked Marcus about my treatment. Marcus had laughed and said I was being dramatic about normal side effects and that I was trying to get attention. His father said he knew in that moment he'd failed as a parent. The Guardian ADM who investigated our situation spent a week reviewing evidence. Her report stated that Marcus had shown shocking callousness toward his spouse's life-threatening illness and recommended I receive the House majority of assets and permanent restraining order. She wrote that Marcus's behavior suggested he'd been hoping I would die so he could avoid divorce and keep everything. That last line made the courtroom go completely silent when Patricia read it aloud. Marcus jumped up shouting that she couldn't say that, but the judge banged her gavel and told him to sit down. His own lawyer looked disgusted and whispered something harsh to Marcus that made him turn red. Marcus's co-worker from his new job contacted Patricia with evidence we didn't even know existed. He'd overheard Marcus on the phone talking about waiting it out because cancer kills people anyway, and better than getting divorced. The co-worker had recorded the conversation and sent it to us. Patricia played it in court and Marcus's lawyer actually dropped his pen. The judge took a recess and came back 20 minutes later. She said in 30 years on the bench, she'd never seen such calculated cruelty. She granted me the house, 75% of marital assets, my car, and permanent restraining order. Marcus was ordered to pay my medical bills and legal fees. She said any attempt to contact me would result in immediate arrest. Marcus stood up screaming that I'd manipulated everyone, that I'd played the cancer card, that this was all a performance. The judge held him in contempt and added 30 days in jail. 2 bailiffs had to drag him out while he screamed about the system being rigged against men. His lawyer grabbed his briefcase and walked out without looking back. 6 months later, I'd finished treatment and been declared cancer-free. My hair was growing back in soft curls. I'd started a support group for people dealing with illness and unsupportive partners. Marcus sent letters from jail that I forwarded to Patricia unopened. He violated the restraining order when he got out and went right back to jail. His mother visits me sometimes and apologizes for raising someone capable of such cruelty. I tell her it's not her fault because some people just show you who they really are when you need them most. She set up a trust fund for my future medical care using money from Marcus's inheritance that she promised him. She wrote him out of everything. 2 years later, I was healthy and strong. I'd started dating someone I met at the cancer survivor group who understood what it meant to fight for your life. Marcus was still trying to appeal the divorce settlement, but every judge denied him. He'd lost his career, his family, his reputation, and the house because he couldn't stand hearing about cancer. Sometimes doing the right thing means protecting yourself from people who can't love you through hard times. I chose myself when Marcus tried to use my illness as a weapon, and I'd make that same choice again every time. Looking back, that moment when he told me my cancer disgusted him was the moment our marriage really ended. I just didn't know it yet, but taking his words literally and giving him exactly what he asked for exposed who he'd been all along, a man who loved his comfort more than his wife's life.